Hello, my friends. Welcome this Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. to Find It, where this week I have a special guest, as I always do. But this person is near and dear to my heart, and his name is Christopher Dray Stewart, also known as Just Dre. And tonight he's going to talk about his life's journey to sobriety and inspire us to all have hope that for those in this world who are struggling with any type of addiction, that there is a way out. He has done it. He's going to share his story, and we're going to play a little intro for Dre. And then after that's over, he will be right back with us. Hey, Dre.
Hey,
How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to see your face, and I'm so excited that you're here to join us to share your story.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
And I know this is the first time. I didn't realize this until you and I had texted a little bit, that this is really the first time you've ever really gone from the beginning and taken people through what you've gone through in your life. Are we ready for it?
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's just start with tell everyone where you were born and raised.
So I was
Hi,
born
Sean.
here in Chillicothe, and I've been here, since.
Yeah.
I went to Union Odo High School until 10th grade. I was homeschooled, and I went to vocational school. And yeah,
What
just
did
about that.
you study at vocational school? I didn't realize that.
Automotive technologies. That's where I
Awesome.
learned I don't like working on cars.
Well, you know what? In life, we have to do things sometimes and try it out to know what we do or we don't like. So I get it. So you were born and raised in Chillicothe. You went to the county school called Unioto through 10th grade. Now, why were you homeschooled?
I couldn't stay out of trouble,
Oh,
and I actually made the decision to homeschool myself.
okay.
And
And that
then,
was in 10th grade. So then did you graduate high school on time?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
you
just
were
did 10th
determined.
grade through ECOP.
Oh, wow. Hey, John Horton. Hi from Chicago. Thanks so much for doing this. Do you know John Horton? Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Sean. I saw Sean pop in, and she's saying hello to you, Dre, and Flo, and
Hey,
Trisha
everyone.
Harp, and Cannon Ratcliffe. We've got a whole crowd cheering for you. It makes me so emotional. I'm just so glad you're here. I know part of your story, Dre, and let's go back to your childhood a little bit, if you can. Give us an overview of what your childhood looked like.
So, one, just let me get this out of the way. The camera's right here, my computer's right here. So when I'm looking down, I'm like looking at Debbie and myself, and it's really hard to like not do that. So,
That's okay. It doesn't matter. As long as I can hear you, I'm good with it.
I don't know how in depth I'm going to go to like certain things. I've thought about it all day, and it's like I listen to people share their testimony, and so many people get wrapped up in like the chaos, and there's really no substance in it. It's just a story of, we all go through chaotic things. I want to touch on a little bit about my childhood, where I was mentally and emotionally. I want to talk about my parents a little bit and the things that I witnessed with them, um, and the understanding that I've grown to develop over the years of, why things were the way they were, and the impact that it had on me. So, going back to the childhood, and again, for people watching, like I don't reflect a lot on my past. I think as a child, I kind of shut that off because at the time, going backwards was a bad place. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of hurt, and deeply, I lost the ability to reflect on the past. But over the years, through working it out, and it's gotten better. So I'm gonna try. Just bear with me. So as a child, I was lonely. I was lonely. and afraid. My parents, you know, I don't even know where to start. Let me just
Okay.
speak a little bit about their journey and what I've grown to understand. And even to this day, a lot of my parents' upbringing and their experience with life is a mystery to me. But through certain events throughout my life, some of it's been revealed, and I've grown to realize they had a very dark upbringing. My father was abused mentally, emotionally, and physically and sexually for many years of his childhood. And same with my mother, sexual abuse and physical abuse. So I believe that they did their best to stop that darkness from bleeding into us kids' life, me and my brother and my sister. But I've grown to understand that whenever you create a wall, it's double-sided. You know, if you don't let the bad emotions out, it's hard to let the good emotions in.
Mhm.
And that affected me as a child because we never really had anything outside of a surface level conversation and correction. So I was very curious. There's a lot of things that I didn't understand, and I didn't have that emotional connection with my parents. So I was, like I said, lonely. I was kind of alone in my own little world. And looking back now, I realized like that caused an identity crisis in my life. I was so curious, but I didn't know who I was. And you hear like, oh, you can be anybody you want to be. So I remember like I wanted to be an astronaut, and then I wanted to be the world's strongest man. And to realize like I'm looking around, looking at the possibilities, what can I be? And I find something that I think I like, and I'm like, I want to be that. And I can remember, you know, I don't even know if I was in school yet, telling my dad, like, I want to be the world's strongest man. And he said, well, you're going to have to do push-ups every day. And I probably gave up after my first day of push-ups. So that was out the window. And, you know, as I was reflecting today, like for the first time, here I am 29 years old. And for the first time, I realized when I was in kindergarten, I really took a liking to the most unruly kid that I've probably ever witnessed in my life. And I started asking myself, like, why? Why wasn't this? And I think, you know, we couldn't relate as humans, but the darkness inside of us related to each other.
Hmm.
He expressed his extremely extrovertly. Mine dwelled introvertly. I could not let mine out, but it was there, and it manifested into crazy things internally. And so I wanted to be like him. Like deep down, I realized I wanted to be like him. And I didn't start acting on these characteristics until probably the first grade. Um, that one boy took off from school. I didn't really see him again until my adult life. But there was another one who was just super unruly. And, you know, that started to make an imprint on my character. I started walking different, talking different. I would do this when I talk, like I was a gangster. And, you know, I can remember when I was probably 7 years old, I had this CD that my buddy gave me, and it was a rap CD, a Young Buck, straight out of Cashville. And I can remember listening to that music every day on the way to school. If my parents would have found the CD, they would have took it from me. But I remember I wanted to be like them. I didn't know what they were talking about, but it sounded like they had it together, and people knew who they was. And, you know, they just ran around the world careless. And the deeper I got into this music, the more I wanted to be like it. It was like I wanted people to fear me. Um, I think I just wanted noticed, like deep
Mhm.
down, and that was my outlet. So that left an imprint on me as a child. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, my chaos was extremely introvertly, to where I would envision these crazy scenarios of these
Yeah.
things. In sixth grade, there's probably only a handful of people who know this. Um, God bless the boy who rode beside me on the school bus
Oh no.
because he knew about all of it, and he was probably terrified. But I had this imagination of holding my classroom hostage,
Wow.
and you know, I planned this out for weeks. I would constantly ask my parents, What time do you go to work? What time do you go to work? What time do you go to work? And I'd make up excuses for what I wanted to know. I told my dad to show me his guns. I want to see your guns. And I'd watch what key he used to open up the lock. And so for a couple weeks, I'm trying to get this key off of his key ring, but I was terrified of being caught. He had a glass gun cabinet. Finally, I realized, I'm like, okay, whenever they go to work, I know exactly where the bus needs to be to tell the bus driver I forgot my agenda book, so I can run home, smash that gun cabinet, and get that pistol. You know, my dad had showed me how to work it and things, so I knew how to operate it. And the night before, I grabbed the baseball bat from outside and I put it under my mattress.
My gosh, Dre.
And
You were 6th grade?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and like days leading up to that, I've been telling everyone at school, like, this is the last time you're going to see me. Like, they're going to take me to jail and all this stuff. And so bus comes back to my house and I run inside and I grab that bat and I run into my mom's room. I threw my book bag down. I went in the closet and I go to swing that bat at the glass, and they keep the little dog locked up in my mom's bathroom, and it barked at me. And I stopped and I said, "Hi, Toto." It was his name. And I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I ran back in my room, threw the bat under my mattress, and I don't think I thought about it again, but I had this vision of like what it was going to be like the moment I pulled the gun out, the teacher's response. I was going to shoot his phone so he couldn't call nobody, clear up to the police, you know, the standoff. It was these crazy manifestations that were happening in my mind.
Dre, do you feel like a lot of what's going on in the world today with the violence and the school shootings and all of that, it's these kids feel invisible and they're wanting attention. They want to be seen. I mean, have you ever thought of that?
I've never thought of it, but thinking about it now, I can say, yeah, like I was almost there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
influenced. That's exactly where my mind went. And
it wasn't influenced by games. It wasn't, you know, none of that was in my life.
No, there was no video games back then with you and all that. But, you know, the other part of this that really resonated with me. Hi, Steve Rizzo is watching. Dre, your story has the power to heal so many people who are lost.
I can see their comments when they comment.
Yeah. And Nicole Young, God used that dog to stop you.
Oh, amen. It was the whisper. And that's what it was like. It was like a whisper, don't do this. And I've experienced that whisper multiple times throughout my life that I'm going to touch on. So, you know, it was dark up until a certain point of my childhood. I'd say probably 11 or 12 years old. It was dark to the extent that I can't remember much. Like, I see all these pictures of us going on vacations and all of these things, but the fear that I had in my heart and the loneliness just captivated all of it. So when I was 11 or 12, it started with my granny. My granny was old school Southern Baptist, church-going woman. Didn't cut her hair, wore her dress, and talked about this Jesus cat. And so her daughter, my grandma, she babysat us kids, you know, pretty much our whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember my grandma, you know, she was ornery. She was super ornery. She was always cussing, but it was never like angry cussing. It was cussing because it was funny. She wanted to see us laugh, and she'd call the dog the B word, and, you know, little things like that. And
mm-hmm.
She pulled me in my bedroom before school, and I remember her telling me, like, "Dre boy, you have a new granny. You have a new grandma." And she started talking about the Lord saved my soul. And, you know, of course I didn't understand it, but she changed. She wasn't the same. And my parents noticed it. And I remember the first time that we went to church. And, you know, so them seeing the change in my grandma, the Lord started working in my parents' hearts. And I'm going to try not to say and 1,000 times.
It's okay. I'm enthralled in what you're saying. You talk from the heart.
So we're going to church, and I remember the first time I saw my dad cry. And, you know, hearing him tell the story now, it was makes me emotional.
Yeah.
It was when the Lord was revealed to him that he needed salvation. So here's a grown man that's lived his whole life not thinking twice about anything, all of a sudden experiencing this conviction. Where'd you go?
You're still we gave you full screen. Go ahead and give him full screen, Len. I like
Okay.
it.
I like seeing you, Debbie.
I'm here. I'm here with you.
So we start going to church, and you know, I never paid attention in church, and I witnessed this transformation happen in my parents' life. It wasn't instant. It wasn't after they repeated some prayer. It was literally a journey that they went on. And my dad, I can remember him. He started writing this song down, and he would write it verse by verse, and over the course of a few months, and he would sing to us what he had so far. Mm-hmm. And we literally got so deep into the church. I mean, we was going every Sunday, Wednesdays, night services, and that lasted for a good while. And I could see my parents seeking the Lord. I'm seeing them cry and weep at the altar, and they're praying and crying together at the house. The music changes on the radio. It's no longer the pop music, it's Christian music. And it's like they was eat, sleeping, and breathing it, trying to achieve this salvation. And at the end of it,
when you watched that, what were you thinking when you would see that? Were you confused?
I didn't understand. I didn't understand it. It was just, it's just what it was. Mm-hmm. And I guess I felt like everybody went through it. Mm-hmm. I had a hard time seeing outside of my life. My mom kept me very, extremely sheltered. Again, I believe out of an attempt to protect me from the darkness that entered her life. So I remember we was at this revival. We'd been going to church multiple days in a row, and my parents were at the altar. You know, I'm in the back playing with my toys. And well, this time I look up, and my mom's standing up with her hands up, and I've never seen my mom do that. And my dad's still at the altar praying, and the preacher said, "Tell him what he's done for you, sissy." And she said, "The Lord saved my soul." And my dad looked up, and he started praying again, and eventually walked back to his seat. And, you know, everybody's hooting and hollering, rejoicing for my mom. Well, he pulls out that piece of paper and he starts singing it. And at first, you could barely hear him over everyone else. But every verse he sung, it got louder and louder until the end of it, he was just screaming. And my parents received salvation that night. Mm-hmm. And I experienced a change in their life. Mm-hmm. You know, it was different. The anger that was inside of them was relieved and continued over the years. Mm-hmm. So my first encounter with Jesus was, you know, on a Sunday. We went to church every Sunday, pretty much until I left my parents' house. I remember sitting in my church pew, and I mean, it just came out of nowhere that the Lord revealed to me I was a sinner destined for hellfire, and Jesus was my Savior. And I didn't understand that, but I remember that it captivated my entire existence. It was almost like one of those moments in the movies where everything zooms out. And I hit my knees right there, and I started praying. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know what to pray for. I just knew that I needed something. And, you know, my sister went and told my mom something was wrong with me. I got up, and snot's running all down my face. And again, you know, my mom's asking me questions, but I could never open up. I could never open up to my parents anywhere close to outside of a surface level of like what I was truly feeling inside, due to just, you know, experiences as a young child with what happens whenever I speak what's inside of me. And
now you're telling me that in the past, when you were growing up, when you were younger, there was fear there to open up because of the repercussions that would be. Is that what you're saying? So you learned to be an introvert by your experiences, or you
Yeah.
just always, okay, I understand now.
It was like
So,
I learned to, and this was like subconsciously, I automatically went to it. Say what they want to hear.
okay,
Don't tell the truth. Say what they want to hear so you can get out of this situation.
I understand. So you were sort of programmed by your experiences to say what you thought they just wanted to hear. And then there's something you said earlier that really resonated with me, that the kid in first grade that had a dark side, but he expressed it and he was aggressive with it, but you're introverted, but you also had that darkness in you and you identified with him because you had something in common, which was that darkness. So I see the pattern here that you're giving us. That is your young life of feeling like you can't say anything that is below the surface. And when you do speak, you make sure it's something that they want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're giving your parents a ton of credit because you know that the way that they were raised, that they were just doing with you what they knew.
Yeah.
But then they found God, they found faith. And then even though they were better with maybe communicating with you, you still felt like you couldn't. Is that
Oh
accurate?
yeah. And to this day,
It's difficult for you.
there's still stuff
Um,
over there.
but during this process of you, you said in the beginning of this that there were like a few whispers that you had through your life. That's one of them when you were in church and you felt that message.
That was like an audible voice.
Okay.
It wasn't a
And
whisper.
how
That was
old were you, do you
I
think?
was I was probably 11,
Okay. And during
maybe
this
12.
time, are you still, you're getting in trouble, you're doing things at school, you're having those thoughts of holding your classroom hostage, you're still kind of having these dark thoughts at this time? Yes or no?
I guess I've never really thought about it. That's just one that sticks out to me because I came so close to living it.
Thank you, Nicole, for chiming in. And I saw Tracy Yinger Hathaway. Thank you for that. Dre, thank you for surrendering and loving yourself enough to know life had more to offer. And by seeking the Lord, your change has began to shine. Much love, buddy. Thank you. I want to know, I mean, I want you to continue where you left off, but it's really important. And I know that you don't like to reflect because you propel yourself forward by living in the now, and that's amazing. So I appreciate you digging deep, and I know this isn't easy for you. Um, but I think it's important for the impact that you're making to help people have hope and to know that you can come from similar traumatic backgrounds or whatever and come out the other side. And I want you to explain how you did that. But before that, so can you explain to me what your teenage years were like?
Yeah. um, where I left off, it's an important piece
Yeah.
because from the moment after that day, that was the first time I began to pray. And I was seeking to know, like, who is this Jesus? How do I know it's true? Who are you? And I prayed every night until I was greeted with peace. I remember one night in particular, it was like I didn't have anything to be sorry for. That's how I would describe it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I had such an overwhelming, um, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't a desire because I ran from it. It was like a command. It was like he was telling me, tell somebody about this. And I was terrified to. So now, whenever I pray, it's no longer this happy place because I'm being commanded to do something that
And you don't
scares
feel
me.
like
So
you
now I'm
can.
pushing it away. And I began pushing it away. And the word says, there's only two masters that are leading us. So whenever I pushed this one away, the other one took over. And it wasn't long before, I started developing a liking for women. And the music again began to unfold in my life. and I wanted to be wild. I just remember, like, I want to be wild like these people. And so, the first opportunity I had to try any of the stuff that I had been hearing about and imagining what it would be like to do it, I jumped on it. I started snorting pharmaceuticals in 7th grade off the
Wow.
school lunch tables, and experimenting with girls. And, I believe if I could have got my hands on the hardest drugs, I would have been doing them. And then, 13 years old, this is whenever the selling drugs came into my life. And that opened up a whole new love of, now I'm important. Now people notice me. Now people are calling my phone. I'm providing people a service. This is a good thing. And, that was an addiction all in and all itself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a harder addiction to get away from. So, throughout high school, there was an experience in 8th grade. This was a peak, probably the first peak of being suicidal.
This was in 8th grade.
Yeah, I was so just broken. This hole in my heart was never filled. I was constantly going to and fro, seeking things to fill it. It wasn't the women, it wasn't the drugs, it wasn't, my friends or video games. It was just temporary fixes. And it was like every time I would get the fix and then go back to it, the hole was just deeper and deeper and deeper. And so, I told you my mom was very controlling. I didn't have a curfew. I wasn't really allowed out of my parents' sight unless they were out. If they were outside, I could go outside and go up and down the street. But there was like one friend I could go see. He lived 3 houses down. I couldn't see him often. So for me to do what I did was like a huge deal in my life. I wrote a suicide note. And, this is when the hate started manifesting from my parents. I began to blame them for how I felt. It was all I knew. And it was a really evil hate. And I put this suicide note in my locker and I took off from school, and I was gone for like 8 hours. The police is looking for me. The whole neighborhood's looking for me. My family's looking for me. And, I got caught, and this opened up one of the first windows, out of years of crying myself to sleep, that I could talk to my parents about it. And it didn't go the way I wanted it to. There was no resolution. It actually made things a lot worse. And so in that moment, I really bottled it up. And that could very well be, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, it gets really black after that. I don't remember much.
That's after 8th grade.
I was in 8th grade. I ran away again in 9th grade, and this time just, received punishment because I deserved it. I was just looking for a thrill.
Running away. Where were you going?
So I ran away. It was like 8 degrees out. As soon as I left the school, I jumped over a fence into a creek that was up to my waist. So I'm soaking wet and I'm frozen. And I ran from Union Odo, followed the side of the river, cleared to Main Street. And I went to one of my ex-girlfriend's house. Of course, they called my mom when I left. And I ended up getting picked up at McDonald's on Main Street. Didn't really have a plan. It was just one of those imaginations that I lived out. So, I go into 10th grade. I'm failing every class by the first midterm. We agreed to, or I said, like, I want out of here. I want out of this place. Because I would kind of get on track during the summer. But then as soon as I went to school, I'm right back into it.
That's strange. I always felt like it was opposite for kids that were troubled. I always felt like school kept them kind of, but that wasn't your case.
No, because it was school that I had freedom. I didn't have freedom outside of school. So it was in school that I started getting wrapped up into things.
Oh, I see.
It was the opposite
Makes sense.
for me, I guess, compared to some people. But 10th grade, I had fell in love with alcohol. Debbie. Alcohol was my thing. Um, Smoking weed was cool, but alcohol just numbed me.
Mhm.
And I couldn't get it regularly, but I remember from the first time I drank alcohol at my papa's house. I had asthma, so my parents would go outside to smoke. And when they all went outside, I ran to his refrigerator and got in the vodka, and went in the bathroom and drank as much as I could, dumped it, and fell in love with it instantly. And from that moment on, my main pursuit of life was the next time I was going to feel that.
Numbing the pain.
Yeah, so I started drinking a little more in 10th grade. Um, my my access to, I guess, resources was developing. And when I went to vocational school, um, I had pretty much unlimited access. There was a boy who would drive to Kmart and steal me 2 big jugs of vodka, and I'd pay him $5 for them. So I drank myself to sleep every night. And, whenever the bus picked me up, we had the ride to Union Odo, 20-minute wait, 20-minute ride to vocational school. During that time, I was drunk before I got to school.
Wow.
And 11th grade was the first time I ever reached out. We had an assignment, like our first English assignment. I was sitting in the back of this computer, and it said, if you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? And I had a mental breakdown. Everybody else had a computer but me, and she gave me the one in the back. So my back was towards everyone. So I was like alone in this moment. And it was the first time I ever said, I want to quit doing drugs. I want to quit getting high. And I wrote about it. And of course, when I turned this assignment in, it raises concern, and I got set up with the guidance counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first time I ever tried to process, the past, and never really got deep with it. But I knew, like, if I don't get a hold of this thing before I get out of school, then it's going to be bad. And I knew that. So I saw the guidance counselor all year my junior year. I got a bunch of trouble at the end of the year with alcohol. I got suspended my last 5 days of school, the first 5 days of my senior year, and had to go to drug and alcohol counseling. If I didn't, they were going to expel me. 12th grade, as soon as I got back to school, it was right back to the races. And I started heavily abusing pharmaceuticals, the ADHD medicine and the alcohol. And sure enough, by the time, it was coming up to my 18th birthday, the thought of getting away from this was out the window, and I was ready to run the race. Again, just captivated by this alcohol. And I got a job at Riffle Machinery at the end of my senior year. And shortly after that, I was introduced to the opiates and the cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
So I dabbled with that a little bit. I don't want to go too far into that because, it's a lot. So after I left Riffle Machinery, I lost my job at Riffles, couldn't pass a P test. I actually told my supervisor, because, I had no understanding of the real world. I was like, man, I do these speeders every day before I come here. It's one of the best brake builder this place has ever seen. He's like, why are you telling me this? I'm like, I don't know. Next thing you know, the HR is telling me I need to call my mom, and I need to get help. I'm going to lose my job. So I got a month off of work from Riffles. I got set up with the mental health at Adina and did one counseling session. And then I got on that spice, that synthetic weed, K2, and quit doing the speed. So I'm like, I'm good. I got so deep with that spice stuff that, it was unreal. And I've seen people take one puff of that stuff, and I've seen a lot of mixed reactions from it. And, I was smoking it nonstop. I built a tolerance to it. So I went back to work, got wrapped up in it again, lost my job. And then I got hired on at Columbus Steel when I was 19 through my brother-in-law. And, this time I'm in a relationship with a girl, and this was the first girl I'd ever had in my life that I used with. And whenever I got this job, we moved into my grandma's together. And this is where I really got plugged in, 90% of the people who work there are convicted felons. My
Mhm.
forklift driver did like 18 years for beating a guy to death. And I got wrapped up in with some serious drug dealers. So, I'm getting prescription Percocets for $4, and my next door neighbor, they sell drugs. I take them over there and sell them for 12. So I got, all this money coming in, and I'm plugged in on the weed, strong now. I got weed coming from Columbus that people in my generation ain't ever seen. And plus the money on top of my work, yet I was broke all the time.
Mhm.
And I would say that was the first time I ever tried to stop doing drugs and realized I couldn't. I couldn't
Mhm.
go an hour into being at that place without getting high. And was using so many opiates that, the cocaine, I was doing so much cocaine that my body started hurting. And that's when I got real heavy on the opiates. And so I'm doing those both all day, every day. And I'm smoking the spice at the same time. And, when I really reflect on the amount of substances I was putting in my body on a weekly basis, it's
It's
unreal.
scary.
It is unreal at 19. And so, I got a nice car. I had a Nissan 350Z, flashy, sporty car, got all this money, lost my job. Okay.
Yeah.
Pass a P test.
Yeah.
My life, it's one of the best things that happened to me, really, looking back. Yeah. And I had another encounter. I remember I made a video about it, sitting on that bridge, and
You know what, Dre? We're going to show our audience the video right now, Lynn.
See that bridge behind me? I almost jumped off of it one night. It was storming and the water was up about 10 feet. I can remember the voices telling me that I was weak and that I wasn't going to be missed and that I was worthless and never going to amount to nothing. And I sat on the edge of that rail, battling those voices for about an hour in between taping goodbye messages to my friends and family. I'm here to tell you today that if you're battling those voices, they are lies from the gates of hell. Don't believe the lies of the devil, family. You're loved, you're valued, you're worthy, you have a purpose. And if you hear those voices today, reach out to me and I'm gonna slay them in the name of Jesus, because I know those voices are lying to you. Don't hesitate to talk about it. That first step could be the confession, family. You're loved, and if nobody's told you today, I love you.
I love that. And the fact of the matter is, what did you say in that video? Talk about it.
yeah.
It's so important. And I know this is difficult for you.
Thinking back to that moment, I was so still alone. Here I am addicted to these drugs. I can't go around my family. I don't have nothing. I'm losing everything I got. I've bit every hand that fed me. And I was taping those goodbye messages to my parents, and it was storming. It was just storming so hard, and I'm looking at this water, and all I got to do is let go. And it was that whisper that said, "Don't." And that's it. And it was so powerful that it stopped every voice, it stopped everything. And I walked back home. It was like it never happened.
Wow.
And after that moment, it was like the Lord touched me and healed me. It was like instantly I stopped using.
And then what about when you were in your room?
What do you mean?
The second, you didn't commit suicide, but when God came to you, weren't you in you're in your bedroom and you were praying?
Yeah, that was a little later on, but just the desire that birthed in my heart in a moment to get close to God is unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I've had that happen a couple times. This was one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like a complete mind shift. That's totally supernatural. It's really the only way I can describe it. And again, I got close to God and fell short on the obedience part. In the moment that I fall short on the obedience part and I push God aside because I no longer, you're making me uncomfortable, I'm right back to the races. And
I understand. So the day that you're making, you were going to commit suicide and you're writing the letters, you had that voice and you just completely felt touched by the Spirit and God. But then the obedient side, so then you went back to using after that?
Yeah. See, I had accepted Christ as a child when he came to me and revealed himself to me. I can remember, like, I accepted him. I wanted him. And I believe he filled me.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that I turned away from him and started seeking something else, I got wrapped up in it. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was another experience of that feeling, that peace, and the pain was gone. The thoughts were gone. But it was not only gone, it was replaced with love, a love that I could not get anywhere else, and forgiveness. It no longer matters what happened. It's, I don't think about it no more. It's forgiven.
I have a question. What do you say to people who will say to you, Dre, I've prayed. I have gotten on my hands and knees and I have prayed for God to take this addiction away. And I've never had that experience. And you've had a few. What do you say to that?
So leading up to my last encounter, we'll just fast forward to that. Man, there was a good piece that I wanted to hit on, though.
You say whatever you want. We have time, Dre. I want you to tell your story.
Bring me back to that question.
I will.
I'll just fast forward to this last, piece, probably about 2018 was the first time I ever got off of drugs by myself, I guess. And I was, deep into the heroin and methamphetamine and crack cocaine. And I started making music, right? And I ended up, I quit my job. It got really dark. Those imaginations, those visions came back to me. When I was probably 25, me and my brother had talked about some things that we had just never talked about our whole life. Me and my brother kind of got close there at that time. And, he was suffering from addiction. And I became so overcome by this rage that I was having thoughts that scared me. Like I would have these full visualizations at work and then snap out of it and be like, what was that? And it was about killing my family, all of them, cousins, aunts, uncles, who I would, and just the whole process of doing it. And I began to talk to my managers about it. And they gave me some advice, and I agreed that I'm going to seek help. So I was only working 1 day a week, and it got to the point where it's like, I can't be in this place at all. Like if I'm here for 30 minutes, it's so overwhelming that it's going to break me. So I quit my job, and I'm kind of jumping around here.
It's okay. It's okay.
Back to this last encounter with the Lord. I went through a season of completely denying Christ. I tapped into the new age way of thinking that my reality is a projection of my dominant habits and thoughts. And if I can change and reprogram my subconscious mind, I can manipulate my reality to be whatever I want it to be. So I'm doing these rituals, I'm meditating, I'm listening to all these teachers, and got my crystals and all this stuff. And I prayed to source energy. And I was the person who believed that the Bible was written by the government and then people was brainwashed. And I had found something so much greater. And, there was a God in my life. It was source energy. It was the creator of all things, the one true living being that everything comes from, of the universe, whatever that looked like to me. Some, planets floating around in the sky that I had seen pictures of my whole life. And in reality, I don't know if any of that stuff is there. It's irrelevant, but
it's your thoughts. It's part of what was happening in your mindset during this time. It makes sense. I mean, it's part of the story.
In my time of chaos and desperation, that source of energy was nowhere to be found. I went probably about 1.5 years without using narcotics. 2 times I did that I can remember during that stretch, but I was still smoking weed and the occasional drink. But, as I started growing and developing this video business and seeking success for my life, I realized like this is a hindrance. Like I got to get away from all of this. And I eventually went probably about 3 months without using anything. And I started teaching this new age stuff on the internet and just stuff that I was tapping into. And, I would go to shoots in different cities or go to restaurants and people would come up and shake my hand. And, I really like what you're doing. I've never heard it that way before. And this storm brewed up in my life out of nowhere. I remember sitting thinking, and I was just telling Scott about this. I'm like, why don't I smoke weed? And the thought that was ringing in my ears was my dad saying, like, the word says to keep your mind sober. So I look up the definition of sober and come to find out it wasn't until like the 1900s that abstaining from substances and alcohol was related to the term sober. It used to mean being clear and level-headed or clear and level-minded in a time of stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, let me find out smoking weed makes you sober. If you're
trying to make excuses,
if your thoughts are chaotic,
good, yeah.
So I went in the woods and I took this walk and I'm picking it apart. And at the end of it, I'm like, I'm gonna smoke some weed. And called my buddy up, went to smoke some weed. I ended up smoking DMT. People that had it had DMT. I'm like, yeah, let's blast off. And I had a crazy experience that night. And I stayed with the marijuana. The marijuana brought me around some people that I was hanging around because, I was in solitude. That year and a half, I was in like complete solitude. I'm just doing my own thing, developing myself, my education. So now it's like it feels nice to go around people again. And one of the guys I was hanging around pulled out some cocaine. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? He's like, I don't want none of that. Well, of course, a couple times after seeing it and thinking about it, actually, no, it wasn't that influenced me. I had been talking to this girl. It was just the feminine energy piece. It was nothing about a relationship. There was no relationship type attraction to her. I just wanted to vibe with someone. And she was into the rave scene. She got us tickets to a rave. And here I am. I ain't done narcotics for a year and a half. And I'm telling myself, like, I'm going to go to this rave. I'm going to have fun, sober for the first time in my life. I go to this apartment, and it's the dude that was doing the cocaine. He was with me and his brother. And here I am in this apartment. It's just us three dudes and probably, 11 or 12 chicks half naked in their rave outfits, ready to party. 15 minutes into being there, I had taken shots of tequila, I was smoking, I snorted ketamine, cocaine, and was huffing nitrous oxide. Huge relapse. And we go to this rave, and the cocaine, for some reason, stuck to me. Like I was telling Scott, in my years of drug addiction, I never really got latched onto one drug. I binged on drugs, multiple drugs at a time. I would do this drug, wear it out, and stop doing it by starting doing this one. But this time, because I was in a place in my life where I didn't want to do drugs, the drugs was really taken away from what I'm building now. I couldn't stop doing the cocaine, and it started like a couple times through the week and quickly developed into, I met a guy, I can get it for, $40 a gram, which is, it's cheap. And I could do as much of it as I physically could. And in my drug addiction, I was extreme. I'm an extremist. I've heard people say, like, when I do something, I do it. Mm-hmm. So, having an unlimited amount of this substance, I would do it to the point where I was for sure that I was not going to see another day. I can remember times just being stiff, locked up. My muscles were seized, laying in my bed, just sad that I wasn't going to be able to tell nobody goodbye. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I cannot wait until I don't feel like this so I can go do another line.
Wow. Addiction is it's so scary how it takes over your life like that.
Yeah. So 2 weeks into this cocaine relapse, this was the first time I ever experienced Jesus coming after me. I was in a place where I had pushed Christ out of my life. I cringed at the thought of it. And if you told me you believed in Jesus, I was trying to convince you otherwise. And he met me with such a peace and mercy. It was like, I can't explain it. It filled the room of like, I'm here, and I've been here, and you've rejected me. And I remember feeling so sorry, and I wept. I hadn't cried for years. I wept and I wept and I wept. And it birthed that hunger back inside of me for more, to want to know him, to get closer to him. And this time, he didn't deliver me the moment that I asked. I knew that he could deliver me because he's done it before. And, I was going and getting this substance. I was getting this cocaine. First thing I did when I woke up, and, the night before, I'm like, this is it. This is the last night. I'm not doing this no more. And sure enough, when I woke up, it was the only thing I could think about. And it wasn't like I was doing cocaine and going out and hanging out with people and partying. I went out to the woods, and I'm seeking and I'm praying, and I'm like, what do I got to do to get away from this? And the Lord took me on a journey inside of myself and just showed me so many things, like brought me back to the first time I was afraid, what that had done to me, how I'd been carrying that my whole life, and led me through this process of surrender, a complete surrender. So he didn't deliver the moment I asked him. And I remember being in the middle of a field once, and I was screaming, like, why won't you deliver me? And it's just that whisper, why would I deliver you? So you can go back to living your life without me? And that melted me. I remember that moment. And so, it was this journey that the Lord led me through, this 90 days of this relapse. And I talked to a gentleman once, and there's a parable in the Bible. It says, he leaves the 99 to find the one. He leaves the 99 sheep to find the lost sheep. And I hear people say that all the time. They're like, I was the lost sheep. You found me.
You found me.
I heard a guy say, he's like, man, the lost sheep is a sheep that was part of the herd and keeps leaving.
Yeah.
And when the shepherd goes and finds it, he breaks the sheep's legs. So the sheep is dependent upon the shepherd for life, to sustain life, for food, for protection. And when the sheep heals, he never leaves the herd again. And that put a whole different meaning on my life, because this was the first time I experienced Christ coming after me. And he broke my legs. I was at the complete mercy of this substance or him. And, leading up to this moment where he finally delivered me, it was like an outer body experience. I was so deep in my prayer that I wasn't here. I wasn't present. I wasn't in this body. I was on a one accord with his will and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And when I came back to my body, I was different. That fullness was like, it exploded. And my desires changed. My thoughts changed. The drug addiction was lifted up off me. No withdrawal. Here I am, snorting this cocaine all day long for 90 days and not a piece of withdrawal. I got pictures, Debbie. I got to show you, because I took pictures after I got delivered. I'm like, when I put this weight back on, I want to be able to compare myself. And I was skinny. I weigh like 180 pounds right now. I was down to like 130.
Ooh.
And so from that moment on, this fullness, it hasn't left me. And I was telling Scott, he's like, how's your 2.5 years of sobriety been? I'm like, dude, there hasn't been a bad day. There hasn't been a single day that I can remember that was like, man, this day sucks. It's been full. I've acquired more in these last 2 years than I have ever obtained in my life, put together, walking with the Lord. And when I say walking with the Lord, it's literally separating from my agenda and my understanding and going out to nature. That's what I call it. It's my quiet place. And I seek. And the word says it begins with the renewal of your mind. So to understand that what has happened is, this vessel that has been created for my spirit to walk around in this place has been collecting data since birth. And that data that's collected determines my reasoning, my responses, how I perceive the world, the possibilities that are available to me. And to think that this world is corrupted and it's damaged and it's cursed, and you can see it, look around, you can see the evil here.
Mm-hmm.
That means my reasoning, my perceptions, my understanding is also damaged and cursed. And Christ told his disciples, he said, it's to my benefit that I leave you, because of the one I'm sending to you. And he's talking about the Holy Spirit. So when the Holy Spirit has entered me, that's when it says it begins with the renewal of your mind. My subconscious body that has collected all of this information is being renewed to this day as I walk with Christ from a heavenly realm, a place that isn't touched by the deception and the curse that's plagued this world.
Yeah.
And so shortly after this deliverance took place, the Lord again put it on my heart, and it's been spoken to me every time I come in contact with him.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the world what I've done for you. And the first time he told me that, I was a child, there was no cell phones. I was supposed to tell the church, and I was scared. But now, moving into my adult life, we got the internet, and he says, tell them what I did for you. And I remember the first video. I said, what do I say? The first video he put on my heart to make was, Jesus delivered me from drug addiction, porn and masturbation. He took a broken mess and breathed life into my bones. And here I am, this closet junkie. A lot of people don't know that I struggled with these things. Mm-hmm. That terrified me. It terrified me to do that. But I was so full of this power that was like maturing inside of me that I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I remember being nervous. So I set my camera up and I said it like maybe 5 or 6 times. And finally I'm like, you know what? I'm posting it. I posted it and I woke up the next day and 1.8 million people saw it.
I want to show something here.
The amount of
this is, look on the other side of it, Dre. Can you look on the other side? Let me see your face. The fact that on TikTok, this is TikTok famous. He has 500,000. I mean, that's a lot of people watching your videos that you are inspiring.
Those people follow Jesus.
That's right. Good point. They're following the word but you're delivering that. And with you putting yourself out there like you are right now, which is in a different way than you ever have, but starting that and putting that out there. But I want to go back to the question.
Yeah.
When people say to you, or have they ever, Dre, I've prayed. I've prayed. I'm on my knee, and I haven't been delivered like you have.
I've heard it a lot. And, like going back to that bridge video, there was probably 30,000 people that directly messaged me after that video saying that they struggle with those voices. And along with the people who said this video saved my life, I was about to kill myself. And I saw this video. And so that was a whirlwind in my life. But I would have to relate to whenever I was on my hands and knees day after day after day saying, why won't you deliver me? Knowing that he could, because I had experienced it before. The first time Christ took drugs and alcohol from me, when I asked, was the moment I asked. So I knew, I couldn't understand, like, why won't you do it? Why won't you do it? And it was because the drugs and alcohol was the only thing that was leading me to seek Christ. And had he had delivered me at that moment, I would have ran away. It's deeper, seeking Christ is deeper than just being okay or getting out of a mess. It's literally serving a master. It's separating from this understanding and serving this master and serving this one. He says there's only 2 that you follow. It's the enemy or Christ. So I would say that it's deeper. Go beyond your drug addiction. Understand that your drug addiction is a reflection of a heart condition. My drug addiction wasn't what needed fixed in my life. It was my heart. It was what I was seeking. It was my desires. And so,
Dre, what do you say to, let's say we have struggling, okay, every age group has struggles, has maybe a mental health issue with, depression, anxiety. What would you say to your past self? You right now, what would you go back and what advice would you give your younger self to help you not have to live that life so difficult that you have already? I want people who are listening, because I know there are so many teenagers struggling right now in this world with social media platforms in your face, comparison with he has this, she has that, I should be doing this, I'm going to try that, I'm missing out on this, along with all the other things that we all experience as young kids.
Mhm.
even without this? What advice can you give teenagers today to stay? I don't know. What advice do you have?
It would be the only thing that worked in my life is to seek that encounter. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened up unto you. Don't seek to alleviate your problems. Christ said, "Come as you are," and I can testify to that. I was snorting drugs and the things that I was engaging in when I was high.
Yeah.
Um, with the pornography, that was my come down off of the cocaine. Like I would get so high on cocaine that the only thing that can stop me from worrying that I'm about to die was watching pornography, and then being so shameful and things of that nature right after, but still praying and reaching out to Christ. And every night that I went to bed, I would put on praise music and I would enter these trances of prayers. So my advice is come as you are and seek an encounter, seek an experience. Like you literally have nothing to lose. Nobody has to know about it. And it's there to be found. And that goes for anybody, whether you're struggling or you haven't had that encounter. Seek it. You literally have nothing to lose. There's so much to gain. And it's like once you find it, like you realize
Find it. Once you find it.
Once you find it, it's fabulous. It's like whenever I was deceived into this thinking that I was tapped into a God and that God heard me and God was showing up and showing out in my life.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I realized like, wow.
And with you seeking it, with you seeking it like you were, and then him coming to you so many different times and you still going the opposite direction, I think that probably just has a lot to do with you not vocalizing and feeling like you had the ability to let out and discuss on a real deep level what you had inside, and you're running from that is kind of what I get from it. I don't know. It's kind of like my thoughts on it.
Like I said, like if I'm not pursuing what the Spirit is speaking to me, I have to quench it. When you quench the Spirit, you live from the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
When you live from the flesh, the Spirit grieves. When you live from the Spirit, the flesh will grieve because the Spirit convicts your flesh and its understanding of what is good, what is right, what is pleasure, and renews it. But to teach it, you have to correct it. So there's a lot of suffering that comes with walking this thing out. And
I want to say something too, and we're going to wrap up here really soon. Everyone listening, thanks for all the you guys popping in. And I saw Kelly Prater popped in. There's Nicole has had some really beautiful remarks. Thank you. And the first time I want to let everyone know how I know Dre, because I know him personally. And it's Greg Phillips had suggested that the city school district use Dre for our Keys to Success program for a video that we were doing. And I met him through that. And Keys to Success is an anti-drug educational program, which now, knowing everything that I know, there are no coincidences that you were selected, right, to do this. And you've been such a resource to some of the other students to talk to, and they feel comfortable with you.
hello.
Sorry,
Debbie.
That's good. I like the interaction. But when I first met you, I didn't know what you looked like. And I met you and you're all tatted up and everything, which is no problem. And the dreads. And at the time your hair was really long. And I'm like, oh, because in your mind, you kind of think of who this person is who's going to be doing the video for the school. Yes. And JJ Downer, did you do the best videography? Because you did the Good Hue event.
I saw you pop up there.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, in my head, I pictured him differently. And but I got to say, you guys, there was something about Dre when I would talk to him, and it's something about his eyes and when you're talking to him and him listening, I had a real peaceful feeling around Dre. And And I thought, gosh, I can tell he's a sweet soul. Now hearing your story and knowing how much darkness you had bottled up, I didn't feel any of that. Not ever. But I want to talk about the fact that hi, Sean. Yeah, it's an incredible testimony. Yeah, people piping in. When my daughter met you and she came home and she said, Mom, there's something really pure and beautiful about his soul, and he reminds me of my brother. And I was like, that's it. There's a commonality there. My son is the sweetest soul and a big heart and loves with everything in him and is a great listener, and he cares about people and compassionate. And I felt that from the first time that I met you. And I'm so glad to have this opportunity with you and to have this intimate conversation that you're putting yourself yet again out there on another level to put your life's journey on screen so people can learn from you and be inspired from you and find hope, faith, sobriety, and a future. And with that, I want you to give us anything that you have on your mind that you have not yet gotten to say that you would like to share with our listeners.
I was trying to read that comment that popped off. It's no coincidence. God goes before us.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Janessa.
That's my wife.
Aww.
Yeah. I mean, if I was just going to close it out, I would say that seek that. And if you haven't had that encounter that I've spoken about, it's there for you to be had. And it gives you something that you just cannot get anywhere else. The peace and the purpose and the prosperity that I've experienced in my life after, building this relationship. That's really what it is. It's not like a one and done situation. It's something you got to keep going to because there's another force constantly seeking to distract you and take you away. Pursue it. Ask questions in your heart and you will get the answers.
I love that.
Be obedient to the command that is spoken to your heart. And just try to humble yourself, clear your understanding, and seek to find a new understanding. Yeah.
Thank you, Dre. I know you're probably mentally exhausted given all that you have. And I know I appreciate you. I know the viewers appreciate you. And with that, he has found it.
And I want to thank you, Debbie. Thank you for just being a good friend to me and always giving me advice. You're so happy-go-lucky and warm my spirit every time we even just talk on the phone or meet up at the coffee shop. And I'm glad we crossed paths.
Oh, I am too. I feel really blessed. Thank you for that. And with that, have an amazing rest of your evening and rest of your week.
Thanks. You too.
Continue to.
Bye, everyone.
And Lynn, let's do our outro.